Hey guys, thanks for coming back to the channel and continuing to check out my Prioritize Privacy video series. So in the last couple of videos, we talked about Windows and how to minimize your digital footprint by getting rid of things that like you deleted and you want to make sure that nobody can ever recover them and stuff like that. So now we're going to start exploring things that you want to keep on your computer, but you want to keep them private in a way that if somebody were to gain access to your computer for whatever reason, they would not be able to get to these things. Maybe you've got some bank statements on your computer, or you've got social security numbers on your computer, or like driver's license pictures, things like that. Important personal identifying information that is stored digitally on your computer that you're not planning on deleting anytime soon, but you definitely want to keep private in the event that your computer is lost or stolen, like you leave it at an airport or it gets left behind in a coffee shop, somebody lifts it from you, God forbid. But those things do happen. So we want to make sure that in the event that somebody is able to gain access to those things, they can't do anything with them. And the best answer to this problem is something called encryption. Now, this is not going to be a course on how encryption works or what specifically it does. This is, as it shows here in the title, easy encryption. So this is for people who just want to set it and forget it. Basically, encrypt something and never have to worry about it again without knowing the nuts and bolts about how it works, just trusting that it works. And so that's what this video is about. So let's just dive right in. So here on my computer, you can see I've got a couple different things here to serve as example items that you'd want to keep private from people. So a text document with social security numbers, another one with a driver's license, photo and number, and maybe some bank statements. Right? These are all on my desktop. Obviously not a good place to store them to begin with, but we're going to fix that anyway. So encryption is kind of this cool feature that scrambles your data in such a way that nobody can read it unless, of course, they have the password. Now, if you're the only one that has the password, then your data is scrambled and no one else can get to it except for you. Think of it like a treasure box inside your house that only you have the key to. Only this treasure box cannot be broken physically, and you can copy and paste this treasure box wherever you need to. So if you need to put it on another computer or you need to have multiple copies on a network, you can do that and still nobody can access it except for you. Now, Windows has some built-in encryption features like in the cipher.exe thing that I showed you in a few videos ago. It also has BitLocker too. And there's a few other programs out there, but honestly, the best one that I found, at least for my personal use, and I swear by it no matter what, even if you're not somebody who's super focused on privacy, I recommend having this program around anyways, is something called Veracrypt, Veracrypt, Veracrypt. So we're just going to search for that in your favorite search engine or browser. Right here at the top, it says Veracrypt free open source disk encryption with strong security. We're going to click on that one. And then here we'll go to downloads. And since we're on a Windows machine here, I'm going to select Veracrypt Setup 1.25.9.exe. If you're working on a different operating system, obviously you'll select the Veracrypt that goes for that operating system. So it's going to download, and then we'll open up the downloads folder in just a second. We'll either go through this folder here, or we can search for it in our file explorer down here. Either one is going to get us right there. So to downloads, and here's Veracrypt Setup. So I'm going to minimize this. I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to double click on the setup, and it will open up this dialog asking me what language I want. So I'm going to select English because that's what I'm speaking here. And then I can read through this this license agreement if I want to. I've already done it myself. I would recommend that you do it when you get a chance. I'm not going to go through it here for you because there's no need to, but it does have some important things for you to check out. We're going to select install and next. We're going to make all these the default. We're going to keep them all the same. No big deal here. We don't need to change anything. And then we're just going to hit install and let it install itself. And you should see an icon pop up on your desktop just like I did over here on the upper left. All right. And then if you want to donate, remember this is a free program and there are developers behind it that work day and night to make sure that it maintains its integrity. So if you have a couple bucks you can kick their way, that'd be cool. We'll hit finish. And this is going to ask you if you want to read the beginner's tutorial. I recommend doing that after you're done with this video. I'm going to give you the basics on how to set up a file container that's encrypted. But if you want to learn a little bit more, I will have future videos on some of the things, some of these other features, but for right now, we're going to keep it very basic and simple. So check out the beginner's tutorial if you get a chance. But I'm going to say no. All right, so let's get started. So I'm going to move these over to the side here so that I can kind of keep an eye on them. Over here, thank you. And we're going to double click on the Veracrypt icon, and you're going to see this window. Now, it seems pretty confusing, but I'm going to walk you through it, so just follow along with me. In this upper left-hand column, or this upper left-hand menu, we'll see volumes. Click on volumes. Third one down, create new volume. Select that. All right, so we're going to create an encrypted file container. And like I said, this is going to be akin to like a treasure box that you'd find in your home where you can basically store things in it and it's locked and no one can access it unless they have the key. And you are going to be the only one with the key. We're going to keep this as a standard Veracrypt volume. I'll have a future video about how to make a hidden Veracrypt volume and what exactly that is. But for right now, we'll just stick with standard. Now, this is the part where it can get kind of tricky. So the volume location, I'm going to actually put it right here on the desktop so you can see how everything goes, but you can put it wherever you want, honestly. So I'm going to go to the desktop here, and I'm just going to type in a file name. I'm going to call this folder, but you can call it whatever you want, like encrypted folder, hidden folder, secret folder. And it doesn't have to have the word folder in it. I'm just stuck on folder, but I'm just going to call it folder for all examples for our example right now. Actually, I'm going to call it treasure chest. That seems a little bit more appropriate. And then hit save. And there we go. You should see it populate up here. Make sure this is checked, never save history. And then we'll hit next. All right, now this part again, we can keep this all defaults. If you want to learn a little bit more about what encryption is, I suggest Google searching that and checking out all the documentation about what the different algorithms are, because there's a whole bunch to choose from. I'll have a future video about what's the safest way or why you'd want to pick different algorithms and why you'd want to pick different hash algorithms down here. But I'm not going to explain any of that stuff right now because you're probably here, you just want to make a quick encrypted file container that ensures your privacy. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to leave the defaults here, AES and SHA-512, and we're going to hit next. Now this is the part where you want to decide how big you want this container to be. And here's the thing, once you choose a size, it stays that size. You can't expand it or contract it in any way without making a whole new container. So keep in mind, think about the future and what else you're going to be storing in here. If it's just going to be for documents, then maybe 500 megabytes is probably appropriate. But if you're looking at like pictures or something, you might want to select gigabytes and maybe have it be like 5 or even 10 gigabytes or even as much as 20 or 30. Remember, the only limitation is how big your drive is. So my C drive is 37 gigabytes big. So my Veracrypt volume or my Veracrypt container, my treasure chest, can be a maximum of 37 gigabytes. And that's it. It can't be any bigger than that. But if you have a hard drive that's measured in terabytes, you can make this huge container if you want to. Just remember, you're going to have to unlock it every time you want to access it, and that's a lot to unlock. So think about what you're going to be storing in there and how important it is. I'm going to make mine very, very small right now just to serve as an example, but I don't recommend making it this small. 100 megabytes is kind of little. That's not really going to store a whole lot of stuff. So hit next. Now this is where you choose a password. I'm going to do a future video on how to choose really strong passwords. Veracrypt recommends a 20 character or more password. I'm going to put in a short password just for the example here, but I do not recommend using a short password. Okay? Choose something that is very, very long and strong, something that you're not going to forget, but something that people can't guess either. Again, I'll have a future video about how passwords should be chosen. And then you'll see all these other options down here. These are more advanced features that I'll talk about again in a future video. And I know it seems like a lot of stuff I'm going to be doing in the future, but trust me, there's a lot of stuff here to unpack, and I'm not going to get into it all in this one simple, easy encryption video. All right, so once you've chosen your password, we'll hit next. If you do choose a short password, it's going to remind you like, hey, these are easy to crack using brute force techniques. We recommend a stronger password, 20 characters or more. I would recommend going back and doing that as well, especially if you've got stuff like social security numbers and bank statements in there. But for right now, this is just an example, so I'm not too worried about it. So I'm going to select no. Or sorry, I'm going to select yes, because I do want to use this password. All right, so this last part here is going to set up the volume, and all you need to do is move your mouse within this window. Now, the mouse has to move within the window, and you'll notice down here, this red bar is slowly growing, and it'll turn yellow and then eventually green. If you move the mouse outside of that window, that bar stops moving. So you need to make sure that you're moving your mouse randomly inside this window in order to make that bar down there turn green. And what that bar is just essentially the amount of randomness that the program is collecting from your mouse movement that it's going to use to seed the encryption key that's going to be used to lock all of your data. All right, so once that is green, you don't have to get it all the way to the end. You can if you want to, but it's not a big deal. Once it's green, you're good. Hit format. It's going to take a few seconds. Depending on how big the container is that you decided to make, it will determine how long this portion takes. But once it's done, you can hit OK. And then after this, we're done. So we can hit exit. And that's it for that portion of creating the encrypted file. And so now we're going to take a look at exploring the inside of that as you can see up here, treasure chest that it's made over here on the left-hand side. So we'll get into those details right now. All right, so now we're going to take a look at what's actually inside this treasure chest here, and we're going to start loading it up with stuff. So you may notice that here on my desktop, it is just shown as a type of file. It shows that it's 100 megabytes in size, and that's it. It doesn't really have much else to it. In fact, if I double click on it, Windows doesn't really know what to open this with. And that's because this is a special proprietary type of file that is a Veracrypt specific file and can only be opened with Veracrypt. So what we're going to do is go back to our main Veracrypt window. If this closed for whatever reason, remember, just double click on your Veracrypt icon on your desktop. And we're going to select any of these letters. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to select G here just because, but it really doesn't matter which one you select. You can select any of the letters here that you want to. And then we're going to right click on that letter and you'll see some options. We're going to go to the second one, select file and mount. All right. And we're going to select file and mount, and we're going to navigate to where this file is. Now for me, it's on the desktop, but if you placed it someplace else, then that's where you're going to navigate to. What's cool though is that you can move this wherever you need it to as well, and we'll get to that in a second. But I'm going to go to the desktop, and here's treasure chest. So I'm going to select treasure chest by clicking on it once, and I'm going to select open. And then it's going to ask me for the password. So I'm going to type in my super short and super not very secure password. Select OK. It's going to take a moment to decrypt it, and then you should see it populate right inside this window here where there was nothing before. All right. And now from here, you could double click and it opens it up as if it's a folder, which is kind of cool if you think about it. And what's cool about this too is that it is considered kind of separate from the rest of your operating system. So what that means is that if you go to, say, this PC, in this PC, there we go, and you open up this PC, where once you had just one hard drive, your local disk C, now you have what looks like two hard drives. This is my local disk G. This is the one that I selected from up here, letter G. Now, remember, this is not a separate hard drive physically. It's just looked at by your computer as a separate hard drive on the physical hard disk. But there's actually, this is stored within here. And that's a little bit technical, so if you don't really understand that, don't worry about it. Just understand that whatever you do to this disk does not happen to this one, and vice versa, unless you physically make changes. So if you remove this disk from your computer, the disk C, this disk G also comes with it. All right. Again, it's very technical, so I'm not going to get into those details, but for a future video, maybe I will. All right, so let's explore this a little bit more. Let's go back into here. So here is my treasure chest, local disk G, as it's shown up here. And what this is now is a folder, essentially. This is a folder that I can store stuff in. So I'm going to take all of these items here, and I'm going to right-click and cut, and I'm going to paste them into this folder. All right, and so now they're within this folder, which is called my treasure chest, essentially, the treasure chest file that's here on the desktop. Now, if I close this and I go back to Veracrypt, right, I can open it up again from Veracrypt, and there's all of those items that I placed in there. Likewise, if I go to this PC and once again select this local disk G here, my treasure chest, and double click on that, there's all those items again that I just placed in there. But what happens when I want to close this completely so that nobody else can access it, when I want to essentially lock the treasure chest? Well, all I need to do is make sure that it's selected. Down here on the left-hand side, it says dismount. We're going to select dismount. And then that's it. It's done. It's not mounted anymore. And if you go to this PC one more time, you'll see that that drive is no longer there. You can't click on it. It's not available. And if you go to treasure chest here on the desktop, once again, Windows doesn't know how to open this, and so it can't. This now is a file that contains all of those smaller files that you place in there that no one else can access unless they have the password. And that's it. That's the beauty of it. It is essentially set it and forget it. You can exit Veracrypt and you can move this wherever you want to, but it will remain locked until you unlock it again with Veracrypt. So let me show you one other thing that is kind of proof of point. So here is my downloads, and I'm going to go to my documents instead. Now, right now my documents folder is empty, but I'm going to move the treasure chest into my documents. So now notice it's no longer on the desktop, it's in my documents instead. Okay. I'm going to open up Veracrypt again. I'm going to select a different letter this time just to prove that, or just to show you that it doesn't matter which one you select. We're going to go select file and mount. And now this time we're going to go to Documents instead. So it's already there, but I just want to show you in case it opens up someplace else. Here on my desktop, where the treasure chest once was, it's no longer there. If I go to Documents now, there it is. I've moved it to Documents. So I'm going to select Open. I'm going to put in my super unsecure password again one more time. It's going to decrypt, and then there it is. There's my treasure chest. And once again, if I go to this PC, you can see that it has now remounted. This time is drive H because that's the letter I selected. If I open it up, there's all my documents or my items, my personal identifying information. Additionally, if I open it up from here, same thing, all of my personal identifiable information. And I can take these out of here if I want to, move them back to the desktop if necessary. But remember, if I do that, it's no longer secure. So I want to make sure that this stays in this folder here. I'm going to just remove that because you notice what I did was when I pulled it out of here, it actually made a copy to the desktop. So keep that in mind as well. Now, any changes that you make to these items in here, they remain in these items, right? It's kind of hard to explain in really simple terms, but essentially just imagine this is just another folder on your computer. You just have to use this program to access it, and it remains locked from everybody else who doesn't have the password. And that's it. And now you can keep all of your documents safe. Fill up this folder as much as you want. When you're done, close it and dismount. And now it is locked again until you open it. And if somebody gets access to your computer, no matter what they try and do, they will not be able to access this treasure chest. It is locked away from them. So all of your personal identifiable information and any documents or pictures or whatever that you put in here cannot be accessed by those people. It doesn't matter who they are either. If you make a strong enough password, there is no way to break into this treasure chest. So one last final word of warning. Do not lose the password that you used to make this, because once you do, that's it. There's no way to break into this at all. I mean, there's plenty of theoretical ways that you could try to, but in the end, the stronger the password is, the more unlikely it is you'll ever get back into this if you forget that password. So do yourself a favor, pick a password that's strong, but something that you can remember. And again, in a future video about passwords, I'll make mention of this, but don't write your password down on a sticky note or anything like that that you keep nearby your computer, because that's just asking for trouble. Make it into something that you can actually remember, that you won't forget, and that you can always repetitively put in without having to write it down. Because as soon as you write it down, your password can be compromised, and that would be obviously bad for this treasure chest here. All right, so that's Veracrypt, and that's how it works. Like I said, in a future video, I'll talk about passwords. I'll also talk about the more detailed features of how Veracrypt works and keep you secure in your Windows machine. But until then, thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed the video,